สำหรับเซสชันแรกของการเริ่มวันที่19พฤศจิกายนของเรานี้ค่ะนะคะเราก็จะต้องขออนุญาตเริ่มด้วยการอภิปรายค่ะในหัวข้อการป้องกันองค์กรจากภัยไซเบอร์โดยเราได้มีวิทยากรนะคะรับเชิญจาก Microsoft Digital Crime Unit นะคะและในช่วงแรกนะคะเราจะมารับฟังสาระความรู้และเราได้รับเกียรติจากคุณ Mary Jo Schrade นะคะจาก Microsoft Digital Crime Unit ค่ะเดี๋ยวเราจะไปรับชมกันเลยค่ะขอเรียนเชิญค่ะ
Hello, thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Mary Jo Schrade, and I lead Microsoft's Digital Crimes Unit for Asia. And my colleague who is with me and will participate in a panel discussion is Anup Kumar, who leads our analytics and investigations for Asia. So today I'm going to be talking to you about what Microsoft sees in the way of cybercrime and cybersecurity in Asia. And this is based in large part on our digital defense report that Microsoft released in the past month. And this is available on Microsoft.com if you would like to see the full report with more than 100 pages of detail on what Microsoft sees. I'll today focus on an introduction to the Digital Crimes Unit, which I lead, as well as how we use machine learning in our investigations as a part of the Digital Crimes Unit. Then I'll shift over into the state of cybercrime as we see it, nation-state threats, supply chain, IoT, and OT security, and then some key learnings. So first, the Digital Crimes Unit, our mission and programs. As you'll see, we have a number of areas that we work on in the Digital Crimes Unit. And our mission is to lead the fight against cybercrime, to protect customers, and promote global trust in Microsoft. The areas that my team is focused on are listed along the right-hand side of the slide. And these include malware, ransomware, business email compromise, the malicious use of Azure, our cloud technology, tech support fraud, those frauds that are done in the name of Microsoft purporting to help people with something wrong with their computer, online child exploitation, payment disruption, and finally, business operations integrity. So, in terms of how we use machine learning, this is a newer development for us in the Digital Crimes Unit. For many years, we focused on working on things that were really related to traditional ways of investigating. But when we started working on the technical support fraud, we realized that we needed help in a technological way. We were getting reports about people who were victims of technical support fraud, but by the time we received the report, the information about the pop-up that they saw on their computer was so out of date that it was very hard to investigate and figure out who were the criminals behind that operation. So we went to our internal team that works on machine learning and large data analysis projects. And we asked them to help us go out through the internet and search for these pop-ups and analyze them to find the ones that are most recently used and that are being used in the name of Microsoft or one of our products. And then create that machine learning model where it would analyze, get feedback, and get better in order to pull back the most recent criminal gangs' work and to be able to take action. So we went out and pulled back lots and lots and lots, tens of thousands of these pop-ups at a time, and then used that image classification model to assess whether it's correct or not correct and provide feedback into the tool. And as a result, what we found was we had the very most current information about what the criminals were doing, which helped us build a number of cases that we were able to refer to law enforcement. In fact, more than 30 have been referred in India alone, as well as a number in the United States and Australia and parts of Europe. So that's just a little window into how the Digital Crimes Unit operates. I'll shift over now into the state of cybercrime as we see it based on the Digital Defense Report. So the Digital Defense Report itself is based on what Microsoft sees in the way of signals. And these signals come from across all of our operations. So when you think about, we have our cloud operations, but we also have Xbox and LinkedIn and GitHub and a number of other entities, each one with its own information about what attacks are happening, what kind of behaviors we're seeing. So all of these signals pulled together are what we use to analyze to see how our customers are being impacted by cybercrime. So you can see here the number of emails that Microsoft is able to block as a result of recognizing the signals for malware being distributed or phishing emails. We're looking all the time and trying to detonate those dangerous links. So a lot of this action is taking place in an automated way, but at the same time, we take that information, compile it together. It's anonymized, so we're not looking at particular companies' information, but the anonymous signals, and then we look at what that means for our customers. So one of the challenges that we're seeing is that there's a whole economy now around cybercrime. So this economy has built up to the point that to be a cyber criminal, you no longer have to be an engineer. You no longer have to know how to code. You actually can buy a kit that will enable you to just commit the type of cybercrime that you are interested in committing. So, for example, if you wanted to attack a particular company or website, you could do that for a small amount of money. If you wanted a ransomware kit that would enable you to get ransomware locked onto computers of a particular company, you could do that for basically a small amount of money, or you would pay the criminal you're purchasing from a percentage of your ransomware, and that way you would have no investment up front. You can do spear phishing for hire. There are all these various things. Just about any type of crime is one for which you can hire someone to do the work for you or to provide you with the malware you need to do it. And so as a result, the proliferation of cybercrime has been dramatic. It is much worse today than it was 10 years ago because of this model enabling many people to get involved in cybercrime. And that's what law enforcement and businesses are having to deal with every day. So in terms of the ransomware and data signals, you can see the chart on the left is ransomware encounter rate by machine count. So just looking at the blue lines of the chart, you can see that there has been an increase over this period of a year in terms of ransomware encounters. And there was a surge, as you can see, toward the end of 2019, and then in early 2020 at the outset of COVID. Then we have a group within Microsoft called the DART team that's involved in helping customers that are impacted by ransomware. And these engagements have increased over time. So the detection and response team gets involved and they keep statistics on the nature of the companies that are most frequently attacked. And what they see is the consumer sector, financial sector, and manufacturing are the three areas most frequently attacked. And then healthcare is also being attacked, although the ransomware actors claimed that they were not going to attack health-related facilities during COVID-19, but we haven't seen them decrease their attack during the pandemic on healthcare. So phishing is the most common type of malicious email observed in our threat signals. These emails are designed to trick people into sharing sensitive information such as usernames or passwords with an attacker. To do this, the attacker will craft a variety of emails using different themes such as password reset emails or notifications that have a sense of urgency, trying to get someone to click on the link and open it so that the malware can start running. And so one of the things we saw was during the start of COVID, we saw a big increase in the number of phishing emails that used COVID related information as that lure, because people were feeling unsure of what was happening and they wanted to better understand how it was progressing, how many infections there were, and things like that. So the attackers used that lure to get people to click on the link, and then it would load malware onto their systems. And the phishing web pages themselves, they may use malicious domains that they purchased, that the attackers or the owners of the malware purchased, or they can compromise a legitimate domain and then use it for their distribution of phishing and collection of passwords and credit cards and related information. So some of the most frequent ones that we see are trying to get the work password and username combination. And so they might pose as a legitimate Office 365 page, for example, looking as though it's the kind of email you would get. The font is very similar to the font that is used in a legitimate Microsoft email, but they will say you need to do a password reset. And when the person clicks through, it will take them to a site that looks much like a Microsoft page, and they will put in their password. And sometimes they even have created the malware so that when someone does this on the criminals page and they harvest or collect, for example, your banking login information, the next step actually takes you to the banking login page very quickly. And so the people who just put their password in may never realize that they were on this page in the middle and that their information has been collected, that their password is now known by the criminals. And so this is problematic as well. While they might still have to log in again on their bank website, it would look to them as though they just maybe mistyped their password. So we're also seeing other types of malicious email where either a gift card scam, which is something that many people may have seen, or that they try to look as though they are using a contact form from a website. They're doing anything to try to make themselves look more legitimate so that people would be more likely to input their information into the page. So the interesting thing about these fish kits, and I won't go through all of the steps of the hidden economy of fish kits, but one of the interesting things is that when this information is collected and someone has purchased a fish kit to do phishing on their own, they harvest information, but it also goes back to the criminals who were originally the ones who created this. So even they are basically preying on their fellow criminals in terms of they also get that information and harvest it, so it's not just available to the criminals themselves. So, so that's, I guess there's no honor among criminals. So switching over to malware as a whole, malware in the cybercrime infrastructure has really continued to expand. There are key malware areas where Microsoft 365 Defender threat intelligence has observed some changing trends in recent years, many of which are innovative, but also based on those historic practices that have taken place over time. So within the popular malware types and delivery methods, there are a number of different tactics, but despite the wide range of outcomes such as ransom or data loss or credential theft or even espionage, most pieces of malware rely on similar strategies for establishing themselves onto a network. So the Windows PowerShell launch is the most popular way of malware getting onto a system. Some of the other things that we're seeing are browser search result manipulations in different ways to try to bring to the top of a search result the malware site, so that someone might click on what appears to be a PDF providing information about a topic they're researching when really it's a malware site. And this can be done either through existing malware on your computer that causes you to see things that are different than what you would see on a computer that wasn't infected, or it might be just that they purchase search terms to bring their searches to the top of a search for malware. Malicious domains, this is something that we're seeing a shift in terms of the way that the criminals operate, so that blockchain domains are being used more frequently. This is something that makes it more difficult to find out who's behind the domain. There's not the same registration that you would see in a traditional domain registration, and is another way that the criminals are evolving to try to better hide what they're doing and better hide behind their infrastructure. So the evasion attack is something that the criminals are using to modify a query in a way that causes a model misclassification. So this is a way of taking your machine learning that your company might be doing, or that your entity in the government is doing, and the attackers try to damage your machine learning model in order to have it not work as effectively as it would otherwise have worked. So we're seeing a number of examples of this in terms of the manipulation of what's happening, or poisoning of the data that's being analyzed. And it's another way of just trying to make a criminal enterprise more successful, or try to keep somebody from doing something that they may be competitors to one business that they want to disrupt their business. So this is something that we're seeing as well. We're seeing more of the denial of service attacks, the distributed denial of service attacks. So with the COVID-19 pandemic and an increase in internet traffic, we're seeing more of the trends to increase the denial of service attacks, and the cost of denial of service attacks that can be purchased in that cybercrime economy I talked about at the outset have been pretty stable. They did go up, and we believe they went up because just access to the number of servers that you would need or controlled computers to do a denial of service attack were limited, and so the costs went up, but we're seeing them come back down. So this is another area that is really challenging for companies to deal with. We're seeing nation-state threat actors pretty much maintaining their operations at a consistent pace. We've seen changes to the way they do things to try to avoid detection or to try to pretend to be a different nation state than they actually are. So they have been looking at supply chain, such as the SolarWinds attacks, which are a way to get into many places at the same time with just one compromise of software supply chain. And we anticipate that more of this will happen, but this is definitely a focus of nation-state actors. We have been tracking these activities and basically to report on who is behind that, to hold accountable, hopefully on a national or international stage, the actors who are acting in this way. And there are more details about these actors in our report, but at a high level, these are the sample of the nation-state actors and their activities, the type of things that they're doing. And I know this is a difficult slide to read, but basically it calls out the actions of Iran, Russia, North Korea, Vietnam, and China. And then in terms of what we're seeing globally, the United States continues to be the most targeted country, although Ukraine comes in second, and we believe this is because of the Russian-based actor that is attacking in the Ukraine. And then in terms of the most targeted sectors, what we see is that governments are targeted frequently, as well as those entities that work with governments. So they might be advisory entities, NGOs, or think tanks. Those are most often targeted, and we believe that's a way to try to get information about what the governments are doing in certain topics, and that's of interest to other nation states. And then we've listed the most active groups. That goes back to the names that were on that difficult to read chart at the outset. Another thing we see is supply chain and IoT issues, challenges with cybersecurity. As well as the operational technology that's being used in manufacturing, that's also being attacked. And one of the challenges with these systems is they often don't fit within the cybersecurity purview of the entities that are protecting what employees do. So they're not being patched as frequently, and there may be challenges around updating these machines that run factory processes, for example, but then those become the lever for attack to go into that company or system. And so some of the things that we see around cybersecurity hygiene, as we call it, or best practices for staying secure, are not being applied there. And as a result, they're frequently vulnerable, and therefore they are attacked. So the increasing attacks are really starting to be noticed in terms of the type of malware that's being used, the frequency, and then the security policies in terms of what they're doing. While we do see some improvement, there is a lot of indicators that things are not necessarily improving at the pace that they need to be for the privacy and security around critical infrastructure protection and IoT security as a whole. So this is a kind of a disturbing way to summarize the problem. When it comes to IoT devices and those OT devices that run factory machinery and so forth, you can see this chart shows the raw data around the passwords that are used for those systems. So I know everyone has heard about the importance of having a more complex password or using a passwordless approach. And this is a good example as to why that's so important. So these are ways in to these businesses, and their password for over 20 million of the ones analyzed was just the word admin. So you can see that over 9 million, a 4-letter word root was their password. So you can see some of them are just really simple, like just the number 0 is a password for millions of these systems. So we looked at over 280,000 attacks and analyzed the password data that was collected. And we saw that 96% of the attacks used a password with fewer than 10 characters. 92% had fewer than 8 characters. And 72% of all the attacks something that we're really hoping that companies will pay more attention to, because no matter how strong you are on your business side, if you don't address things like this on IoT devices, it's just never going to be safe, and you're never going to have a secure environment. So in terms of the year as a whole, we summarize this as the basics matter, that email compromise is really the #1 way that entities are being attacked through the phishing type email, that cyber criminals use malware posed as legitimate software updates to target unsuspecting employees, and you saw that in a large way with the SolarWinds case, but this isn't just a matter of SolarWinds. It actually expands more broadly than that. And that they're targeting on-premises systems in part because of the vulnerabilities and the need then for the people who own that system to be able to update and patch. But they're not able to rely on the cloud provider to do that. So our key takeaway, multi-factor authentication, if it is put in place where people would have to use not just a password, but also their phone or some secondary methodology, that would reduce the chance that your company would be in the cybercrime situation like ransomware by 99.7%. So that's just something, it's a simple step. So 98% protection can be found in some very simple steps. And this is in our digital defense report. There's more detail on this, but it's not, what we want to stress to people is it's not that you have to have a whole huge staff that is able to patch constantly, that if you take some cyber hygiene steps that you will be able to really protect your company. Criminals will go look for an easier target than your company if you can take these steps. So thank you. I know there'll be a panel discussion, and Anup Kumar will represent us on that, and I appreciate the invitation to come speak to you all, and please do look at our digital defense report if you'd like any more information on any of the topics that I discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was Mary Jo Schrade, the Assistant General Counsel from Microsoft Digital Crime Unit. We just learned the Digital Defense Report and also the threats and risks that the world is facing right now. And just like Mary Jo just said, that 2FA will be more handy these days, and it's simple and effective as well. And next, we are still with Microsoft Digital Crime Unit, and our For our panel discussion, please welcome Mr. Anup B. Kumar, Digital Crime Unit Asia Lead, and Deputy General Secretary, Group Captain Aman Chumchoi from NCSA.
สวัสดีครับ So good morning everyone. Good morning Mr. Anup. So after we watch that video clip, so people will have a lot of interest in learning more about Microsoft Digital Crime Unit, and also they would like to learn more about how Microsoft can prevent cyber threat for Microsoft users. Because as everyone know, your operating system have the most user in the world, and from what we learn in the presentation, I think it might be a good idea for you to provide short summarization on how Microsoft will protect those users from cyber threats. We know right now you provide anti-malware protection via Windows Defenders, and it seems like it's almost free and included with the Microsoft Windows operating system. But also, what else could you provide for our audience about how Microsoft will protect the cyber threat from happening to the clients? Yeah.
Thank you, Group Captain. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So before I go into that, I thought I'll, quickly introduce myself as well, because, it will be important for the audience to understand that, what kind of team, what kind of experiences are there, which is actually working in this space. So I am a former federal law enforcement officer, and, I was with the police almost 11, 12 years before I joined Microsoft, and primarily focusing on the economic crimes. And I joined Microsoft, and today, I lead the Microsoft Digital Crimes Unit Investigation and Analytics and across Asia. And this is the kind of, that our team is primarily focused on fighting cybercrime, and, and investing in areas, time and resources which are of larger public interest. And so this is one of the teams which is in Microsoft, which is the Digital Crimes Unit, and I'll come a bit more about that. But to your question about, what Microsoft is doing to safeguard the customers, for us, the customers are, both on-prem as well as, those on the cloud. So, there are different solutions for both of them, but there are very basic principles that we as a company have, which we focus on. Which is, empowering our customers. For example, this is by direct notifications or alerts, whenever there is anything which is actionable, and we even, notify governments, or, agencies which are working in this area. If, we come across any kind of threats which is either impacting the company, or it could be impacting a government, entity, or, the infrastructure as a whole. And then, we use, technology to detect and defend. And, we are every time, increasing our detection capabilities, and, trying to, bring that and build that into our products so that, our users, are safeguarded automatically. And then thirdly, we take technical action, and that is where, my team comes into the picture, wherein we are not only taking technical disruptions as a piece, but we are going a little further, wherein we are also trying to attribute who is behind it, which group is behind it. And as you would see from the MDDR, the digital defense reports, a lot of that is disclosed there. So we want to, actually empower people with information so that, governments and industry bodies and even consumers can take, take action or be aware about that. And, when it comes to the teams, we have various teams within Microsoft, and the prominent, which, even Mary Jo mentioned during her presentation. Teams like the Microsoft, Threat Intelligence Center, which is also called the MYSTIC, or, the Detection and Response Team, also known as the DART team, and DCU, all of us come together to proactively, detect and also, as I said, work with law enforcement agencies and partner with other industry partners to take action. And then the most important, which I think is the public disclosures. So as a technology company, as a large technology company, we have a voice either in the government sector or in the industry. So we use effectively our voice to try and take steps for, as an industry, as an ecosystem as a whole. We are able to take, we are able to get policies or, draw attention to areas which could have, larger impact for the people as a whole. And one last point I want to mention that, we talk a lot about, hacking of the systems and hacking of our devices, etc. But one important trend that we are seeing, which is also alluded in the digital defense reports, is about the hacking of the cognitive mind, the human brain, by misinformation and disinformation. So this is also something that, we as consumers and, users of technology need to be aware about. And, these are some of the areas that, Microsoft is focusing on as a whole.
Hey, that's great, because the part question will lead to the next one. Okay. Next, this one, I would like to hear about your what I might call war story, because I have been to Microsoft Digital Crime Unit headquarters in Seattle, which is your main head office, and one of the story is about how you take down the network of APT group or the network of ransomware gang to take down the C2 server or turn their C2 server DNS name into a sinkhole and use it to protect your customer. Okay, so I think a lot of audience that been listening and watching us would like to learn about how you go about doing that. What does it take to do such action to prevent those cyber criminals from stealing the information and do criminal activity by taking down their whole system? Could you tell us about the story?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And, I'm really privileged to be a, part of this team, which actually, does this very proactively. And, the Digital Crimes Unit is, I think, one of the unique teams in the industry. And the reason I'm saying that is that there are, a lot of teams within Microsoft which focuses on, and I gave example of Mystic and Dart, but, they are working at the back end. So our team works in the, in the front, and our team is basically, comprising of lawyers, comprising of investigators, analysts, data scientists. So you can imagine that, the reason, a lawyer and investigator and analyst and data scientists are all sitting within one team makes it very, very easy for us to either assess or take an action, quickly, take, decisions pretty quickly and, be very nimble. Because when it comes to fighting cybercrime, if, speed is of, essence, and we need to be able to, take action, promptly and, effectively, so that, there is some kind of a deterrence value that we are able to drive by the actions that we do. Because, and we engage a lot with law enforcement, for example, and even, cyber emergency response teams of various countries, and even, we have got industry partners. But, whenever and generally, we cannot work on individual cases. We will, the DCU will only focus on cases which have larger public interest or have very large footprint in terms of the victims, and which is, global in nature. And it is not, very country specific. We only operate or, take action on, global operations. And there, we once we have identified, we have a team, called MAD team, but, it's actually malware and detection team within the DCU. And that team, generally receives escalations from our, security intel or threat intel teams. And then, they take up a case. Once we take up a case, then one is the investigation part, try and do an attribution wherein we try and identify who are the players or where the C2s are located. And there is, the lawyers in parallel will try and work and try and see what legal remedies are available so that, we can take control of the C2 servers and then sinkhole them. That not only the victims are rescued from the C2s, but we are also able to, by way of sinkholing, we are able to, further mitigate any kind of, risks that our customer could have or notify them. So, we do a combination of both, civil remedies as well as technical remedies, which helps, and our work requires us to work a lot with law enforcement agencies as well. So we partner with them, and that is how, we try and disrupt and deter, cybercrime and, protect customers. But, DCU doesn't just focus on malware. Malware is one important part that we operate globally, but, we have other programs, as, Mary Jo also mentioned, areas like, business email compromise, online child exploitation, then, tech support fraud, and, Azure fraud. These are other, 4 or 5 programs that our team also focuses on. And, I sit in the region and, based in Asia. So we have, it's a global team, as I said, and, we try and partner with our teams across, and irrespective, where one is located or where, the C2s are, we collaboratively take action against them.
That's very interesting. So I would like to summarize that in Thai,
sure.
because I think those are very important information. Okay. ครับก็ในส่วนนี้นะครับคำถามที่เราถามก็คือว่าเวลาที่มีพวก C2 มี APT Group มีเรื่องของbotnet แล้วก็ malware ที่แพร่กระจายไปตามเครื่องครับมันจะมีเครือข่ายของอาชญากรทางคอมพิวเตอร์นะหรืออาชญากรทางไซเบอร์ที่เขาจะมีตัว C2 หรือ Command and Control ที่จะมาควบคุมเครื่องเหล่านั้นนะครับคำถามเราก็คือว่าเวลาที่ทาง Microsoft Digital Crime Unit ได้ตรวจพบเจอสิ่งเหล่านั้นแล้วเนี่ยเขาดำเนินการยังไงบ้างนะในการที่จะจัดการกับเครือข่ายนะครับพวกนั้นนะครับจากที่คุยกันเมื่อสักครู่คือเขาจะใช้ทั้งกลไกทางด้านไซเบอร์นะครับที่จะหาว่าตัวเซิร์ฟเวอร์หรือ C2 เซิร์ฟเวอร์เหล่านั้นอยู่ที่ไหนประเทศอะไรนะครับแล้วดำเนินการควบคู่ไปกับกระบวนการทางกฎหมายนะครับคือจะมีทั้งผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านไซเบอร์และผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านกฎหมายควบคู่กันนะครับในการที่จะยึดโดเมนเนมหรือดำเนินการกับตัวเซิร์ฟเวอร์ที่อยู่ในประเทศต่างๆที่ใช้ประกอบในการโจมตีนั้นนะครับแล้วก็ช่วยให้สามารถจะเทคดาวน์นะครับเปลี่ยนมาเป็นแทนที่จะเป็นเซิร์ฟเวอร์ของ C2 ก็เปลี่ยนมาเป็นเซิร์ฟเวอร์ของ Microsoft แทนนะเพื่อให้เครื่อง Client ที่ติดเนี่ยก็อาจจะได้รับการดูแลหรือจัดการในการแก้ปัญหาหรือได้รับการแจ้งเตือนนะครับอันนี้ก็เป็นหนึ่งในสิ่งที่ Microsoft Digital Crime Unit เนี่ยอาจจะแตกต่างจากกลุ่มที่ดำเนินการในเรื่องของ Cyber Threat Hunting หรือว่าCyber Threat Intel กลุ่มอื่นๆนะครับแต่ว่า DCU ก็ไม่ได้ทำแค่เฉพาะในเรื่องของที่เกี่ยวข้องกับพวก botnet หรือ APT Group นะครับในเรื่องของพวกช้อปปิ้งออนไลน์หรือว่าการฉ้อโกงแบบอื่นเนี่ยDCU ก็เกี่ยวข้องเช่นเดียวกันนะครับหรืออย่างเช่นอันหนึ่งบ้านเราอาจจะไม่ค่อยมีนะเขาเรียกว่า Tech Support Fraud ก็คือปลอมตัวว่าเป็น Tech Support นะครับแต่ว่าจริงๆแล้วคือหลอกเอาข้อมูลหลอกเอาเงินของผู้ที่เข้าไปใช้บริการนะครับนี่ก็เป็นอีกลักษณะหนึ่งเช่นเดียวกันนะครับโอเคก็นี้ก็เป็นข้อมูลที่ดีนะครับที่เราจะได้เรียนรู้กันในวันนี้นะครับโอเค thank you okay time flies and right now we have only a few minutes okay and for this time I would like to from your experience from what you have seen in user behavior from what you have seen in the activity for cyber criminals in many different aspects okay so the question is what would you recommend for users for the common people on how to protect and avoid from being the victim of cyber crimes okay because we know that it's not just about the anti-malware software but you have to rely on the wisdom of the people as well Okay, so for what you have seen on both sides, what would you recommend to the users, please?
Yeah, sure. And I think, that's one of the most important questions because, we are not only, I'm a part of a corporation, but, my extended family, I've got aged parents, I've got children. So, when we are talking about, the measures that one should take, we have to also consider, both the aspects. What the enterprises may require and also what the consumers may require. And that is where, the concept of digital empathy, becomes very important, because digital empathy that we understand that not that, we are pushing something down to everyone, it's the same, type of messaging for like my senior parents and the same for somebody, who is in the security, someone like me. So, we cannot have the same kind of, so understanding, having that empathy in terms of, how do we try and message, how do you prevent yourself from cyber attacks? So, with that, the concept of zero trust, which is, is something like a buzzword at the moment in our part of the world. But I think this concept has been, there for quite some time. And unfortunately, we as human beings are, wired to trust, that is how we are. We always like to trust. We want to believe in things and we want to believe in people. Whereas, we are talking about something absolutely opposite, which is, zero trust. Don't trust anyone. What, I will say that, that may be very difficult to achieve. And that is also not something that I want to send as a message that, don't trust anyone. But yeah, what I will, try and convey to the consumers as well as the industry is that, there are very basic concepts and these are, been there for a long time and I, is being emphasized, the things like, keep your software updated. I think use of, supply chain issues, pirated software, these are the biggest risk that consumers have. So, if you are using pirated software, for example, you are already, that device may not be patching, which is very important. And, that is why, you should always use genuine software and always patch, very, very important, and always keep your software updated. Enabling multi-factor authentication. I'm not even going to the password thing. I'm talking about multi-factor authentication because password is very old now. If there could be, it should be actually termed now as passphrases rather than passwords because words are very easily, breakable. And as you saw from Mary Jo's slides, people have, those simple passwords. And remember, as consumers, do not open attachments or things that you don't understand. It is always better to, utilize, things like anti-malware, which, Captain Sir was also referring to. And, protecting data. An important aspect that we generally forget is the web browser. See, web browser is very important because that is your gateway to the, that is your gateway to the world, to the internet. And many a times, many of these attacks are actually happening because your browser is not updated. It is carried out through the browser. So always keep your browser updated and also, use a browser which has, automatically security features built into it. So I think, I will, without, going, and I'm assuming, more from the consumer side because, people in my area of operations, it is much, much more deeper into what you do. But, as, some of the professionals working in this field, in the field of cybersecurity, I just want to leave you with, think about digital empathy and think of who your user is. Is it a sales guy who doesn't need, that kind of security? Or is it, somebody who is a CEO who needs, higher level of security? So I think these are, very basic concepts and, I want to leave you with that. And one last thing, I think 98% of the attacks, if these are the things you do, would be, can be mitigated. And, and that is where I think the role of government and the industry, partnering together becomes very important, because messaging and educating the consumers, and also, taking steps as a collaborative, body will be very, very effective. So we look forward to, partnering with governments, other emergency response teams, or even industry bodies to work together, in this space.
Thank you very much. I think the keyword you provide us with digital empathy, that's very important because we've been trying to educate Thai people about cybersecurity. And sometimes when you say complex password, we understand. But for some group of people, we have to explain a little bit further. Yeah. Or even multi-factor authentication. We have to show the setting on how you do it for some people instead of just talking about it. And the digital empathy will provide us with more understanding between different level of users and their experience. And also it's very nice that you use the word zero trust, because zero trust for our field, we might think that something that's difficult to implement, but it's a good idea. But if we apply that concept to the way that consumer receive and process the information, so every time they get greedy, they should apply this concept and ask question that if it's a good idea or not, or is it too good to be true, instead of explicitly trust everything. So that's very nice. Okay. And also we discussed about password and how it's not good enough. So I provide the link to everyone in the chat box on how you can check yourself about if your email account accounts have been compromised. You can type in your email address and you can see that sometimes the password that you have been using for many years have already been compromised, and it will happen again. So the best way to protect yourself is that to use multi-factor authentication so that you will be better protected from fraud or any hacking activities. It will eliminate not 100%, nothing is 100, but 90% from compromising the account. Okay, so that's very nice. Okay, let me see that. Okay, this might be interesting. I'm not sure if you can answer this, but it's a question. It's in Thai, so I will interpret it for you. Does Microsoft use honeypot or deception to deploy in different parts of the world to lure in hackers and learn about their activities? Do you use such a activity, or Microsoft Defenders from user is enough? What's your opinion or information on that?
You see, in the cyber security world, nothing is enough, because the way it is evolving. So, definitely most of the cybersecurity team will deploy, honeypots, and, our team also does, because that's one of the ways that, we get to understand. Because one is that we know, knowing is okay, but we need to actually understand to be able to take action. And that is where we really need to monitor, many of the activities of such groups. And that is why, we do use the techniques like, honeypotting, which happens. But of course, I think a large part of our intelligence is actually coming in, from, the nodes or the detection service that we have, and, the endpoints checks that we have. And, now, there are so many ways in which people can report. For example, you receive an email. So there is always a button available wherein, you can mark it as junk, or is it a spam? You can mark it. And a lot of people, put in that effort. At least I do, that every time I know I detect something, I always report. So we are seeing that as well. But yeah, we definitely, deploy all these methods.
Okay, the next question, actually this one is from me about because right now I think a lot of users in Thailand, they are using Microsoft Defenders. as the main anti-malware software. So I'm just curious that does Microsoft provide the statistic based on Thai located users from the one that using the Microsoft Windows Defenders? Do you and if it's possible for us to learn about the statistic on what's happening in Thailand based on those collection of statistics?
Actually, the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because we can definitely as you know that we do sinkholing of the operations that we after we have taken control of a C2, we do the sinkholing, and from there there's a lot of rich data which actually because the victims which are infected devices, they are no more communicating with the C2s of the criminals, but then they are trying to communicate because that is how they are designed. So once the traffic is diverted and DCU sinkholes them, then DCU gets to see the traffic. It doesn't get to see what device and all those things, but it can see at a geo level that where it is coming from, and from there there is something that can be built, but we have certain programs under which we can share some intelligence with the government agencies and law enforcement agencies, and I'm sure that if there is something like that that can be built for Thailand, we'll be more than happy to do that.
Okay, one last question, which is very interesting, and also it might be a little bit tricky on your part to answer. Does Microsoft use other company anti-malware software in your own company besides Microsoft Windows Defender?
It's not a tricky question. It's a straight question, I would say. I myself am also an employee of a company, but I'm also a consumer. And, in my house, my kids, my wife, they all have their own devices. So for us in my house, if I don't use anything else except for whatever the Defender is doing. And of course, I've got a device which is protected by my company, but the devices that my family uses, for example, we don't use anything beyond Defender. That's good enough for us.
Okay, good answers. Okay, so thank you very much. I would like to be the representative from ACSA and people of Thailand, and would like to thank Microsoft and you, Mr. Anup, that provide us with such insightful information regarding Microsoft and what you are doing in preventing your user from cyber crimes. And we are so glad to learn more about Microsoft Digital Crime Unit and the other team as well on how you are working in detecting and preventing the cyber criminals from attacking Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Windows users. Okay, so hopefully we can meet again and discuss more for the future. But for now, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
It was a pleasure. And I look forward to the borders opening and traveling to Thailand. It's been a long time.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
All right.
So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.